Cornell Law School, UCC, Article 2, Sales. Part 4. Title, Creditors and Good Faith Purchasers. Paragraph 2401. Passing of title, reservation for security, limited application of this section. Each provision of this article with regard to the rights, obligations and remedies of the seller, the buyer, purchasers or other third parties applies irrespective of title to the goods except where the provision refers to such title. Insofar as situations are not covered by the other provisions of this article and matters concerning title become material, the following rules apply. 1. Title to goods cannot pass under a contract for sale prior to their identification to the contract, Section 2501. And unless otherwise explicitly agreed, the buyer acquires by their identification a special property as limited by this act. Any retention or reservation by the seller of the title, property, in goods shipped or delivered to the buyer is limited in effect to a reservation of a security interest. Subject to these provisions and to the provisions of the Article on Secured Transactions, Article 9, title to goods passes from the seller to the buyer in any manner and on any conditions explicitly agreed on by the parties. 2. Unless otherwise explicitly agreed, title passes to the buyer at the time and place at which the seller completes this performance with reference to the physical delivery of the goods, despite any reservation of a security interest, and even though a document of title is to be delivered at a different time or place, and in particular and despite any reservation of a security interest by the bill of lading. A. If the contract requires or authorizes the seller to send the goods to the buyer but does not require him to deliver them at destination, title passes to the buyer at the time and place of shipment. But, B. If the contract requires delivery at destination, title passes on tender there. 3. Unless otherwise explicitly agreed where delivery is to be made without moving the goods. A. If the seller is to deliver a document of title, title passes at the time when in the place where he delivers such documents. Or, B. If the goods are at the time of contracting already identified and no documents are to be delivered, title passes at the time and place of contracting. 4. A rejection or other refusal by the buyer to receive or retain the goods, whether or not justified, or a justified revocation of acceptance revests title to the goods in the seller. Such revesting occurs by operation of law and is not a sale. Paragraph 2402. Rights of sellers' creditors against sold goods. 1. Except as provided in subsections 2 and 3. Rights of unsecured creditors of the seller with respect to goods which have been identified to a contract for sale are subject to the buyer's rights to recover the goods under this article, sections 2502 and 2716. 2. A creditor of the seller may treat a sale or an identification of goods to a contract for sale as void if as against him a retention of possession by the seller is fraudulent under any rule of law of the state where the goods are situated, except that retention of possession in good faith and current course of trade by a merchant seller for a commercially reasonable time after a sale or identification is not fraudulent. 3. Nothing in this article shall be deemed to impair the rights of creditors of the seller. A. Under the provisions of the Article on Secured Transactions, Article 9, or B. Where identification to the contract or delivery is made not in current course of trade, but in satisfaction of or as security for a pre-existing claim for money, security or the like, and is made under circumstances which under any rule of law of the state where the goods are situated would apart from this article constitute the transaction of fraudulent transfer or voidable preference. Paragraph 2403. Power to transfer, good faith purchase of goods, and trusting. 1. A purchaser of goods acquires all title which his transferor had or had power to transfer, except that a purchaser of a limited interest acquires rights only to the extent of the interest purchased. A person with voidable title has power to transfer a good title to a good faith purchaser for value. When goods have been delivered under a transaction of purchase, the purchaser has such power even though A. the transferor was deceived as to the identity of the purchaser, or B. the delivery was in exchange for a check which is later dishonored, or C. it was agreed that the transaction was to be a cash sale, or D. the delivery was procured through fraud punishable as larceny under the criminal law. 2. Any entrusting of possession of goods to a merchant who deals in goods of that kind gives him power to transfer all rights of the entruster to a buyer in ordinary course of business. 3. Entrusting includes any delivery and any acquiescence in retention of possession regardless of any condition expressed between the parties to the delivery or acquiescence and regardless of whether the procurement of the entrusting or the possessor's disposition of the good shave been such as to be larcenous under the criminal law. Note: if a state adopts the repealer of Article 6 bulk transfers, alternative A, subsec. 4 should read as follows. 4. The rights of other purchasers of goods and of lien creditors are governed by the Articles on Secured Transactions, Article 9, and Documents of Title, Article 7. Note: if a state adopts revised Article 6 bulk sales, alternative B, subsec. 4 should read as follows. 4. The rights of other purchasers of goods and of lien creditors are governed by the Articles on Secured Transactions, Article 9, Bulk Sales, Article 6, and Documents of Title, Article 7.